Welcome to the Advisor Summit, the podcast where financial advisors gain analytical insights and tactical strategies from the industry's top minds. Each episode, we bring you exclusive conversations with founders, C-suite leaders, and industry innovators, uncovering the trends, tools, and techniques shaping the future of financial advising. Whether you're looking to scale your practice, enhance client relationships, or stay ahead of market trends, the Advisor Summit is your go-to source for expert guidance and actionable takeaways.
Erica, welcome to the Advisor Summit. We're so excited to dive into metrics today and really understand average case sizes. I feel like this is something that's kind of been shushed away and hasn't really been brought out into the light. And so today I'm really excited to dive deep and really understand why the average case size is important, what the average case size is for those that don't understand, and how they can use it to their benefit in the firms. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk about something that's like super in the weeds. I don't get to do that very often.
Yeah. No, this will be a good one. So I kind of want to first start behind the why. I feel like when we talk about average case size, there's kind of this big picture that a lot of people think that they know what that means, but oftentimes it's very misconstrued or people aren't really on the same page of what it is. So how do you define average case size, and why does it deserve more attention than we're typically seeing in the data field?
Yeah. The way that we define it in our office is we look at all the business that got brought in from the current year marketing funnels and divide it by the number of clients that came in from current year marketing funnels. So there's lots behind that, even in of itself as a definition, but like you're writing all these clients all year long. But I really want to look at for right now, how many clients came in from 2025 spend and what was written from that. And that we basically do divide it, and that becomes the average case size. So it's per buying unit, to make that really clear, per household. We're looking at it, not per person or per policy. That's important too. And we don't include existing clients in there either. So it's just brand new buying units or households and how much is coming in from an asset size.
I think that's good clarification. It's household and then also 2025 spend, not necessarily what we spent last year coming into this year. It's very specific to the year. So I think that's really helpful. When we look at some of these national studies, which are all housed in the Resource Center, which we'll link in the show notes if somebody wants access to that. Also, Erica wrote an entire article specifically on average case sizes that gets even more in the weeds, which is housed in there as well. But when we look at some of these national studies, the average case size has consistently stayed above 400,000 over the past 400,000K for about 5 years now. What does that tell you about the landscape for advisory clients, and then how client behavior is right now comparative to the last 5 years?
When I started in this industry a long time ago, and when I started in the industry, a lot of the advisors specifically in this niche work more like salespeople for insurance products and annuities. And so at that point, a lot of people were like, hey, we do really anything that comes in the door. Like we'll sell them an annuity if it works for them, obviously as a fiduciary still, but if it works for them, we'll sell them the annuity. It's not a big deal. As we've progressed and as they've been more educated, as they've watched other advisors grow, there's kind of a twofold thing happening. One, these advisory practices are getting ginormous. That was not a thing when I first started in the industry. You were kind of a solo advisor and you did as much production as you could and sales as you could. And then all of a sudden we saw this huge explosion of actual advisory practices. So what happened there was we have multiple advisors coming on, and they can deal with lots of different demographics of people. So that was one. And then the other thing was we brought in the managed money piece. And as we brought in the managed money piece, it's holistic planning. It's like full retirement planning. It's not just, hey, use us for the annuity, and then your guy over there is going to get the rest of your retirement. It absolutely turned into, hey, we want to be a full offerings firm. And therefore, I've just seen the average case size skyrocket. Like when I first started doing this, the average case size was about 250. Now it's remained around 400 and much higher just in the last couple of years even. So that's on the practice side. As far as the client side, I think it's just a lot of the boomers retiring that all were given like the 401ks, and they got set up when they originally started and they kept the same job forever and ever and ever and built that thing out. And now all of them are retiring and they have these nice padded retirements. And so we're seeing a lot of people, or they're taking like the retirement packages from these firms that are offering them. And so that's kind of just what I've seen from like the demographic side, at least when I'm studying that piece on the people side, their new clients.
I'm so curious what's going to happen when like our generation retires and how that will impact it so differently, because I don't feel like everyone in our generation just keeps the same job and sticks with the same company and has these padded retirements and 401k, throughout their entirety of their career. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of, even digital creation and how that's really come into play for different jobs. And I'm curious how that's going to affect it. But for now, it does make sense. It really does. It's just not our job.
No, I'm the same as you. I was just talking to a bunch of friends, and I think there's only one there were 8 of us this weekend hanging out, and only one of them, her spouse, is in the career with, the long term, been there 20 years. He's going to retire there. Only 1 out of 8. I think our generation is fascinating with this. It'll be interesting to see if I'm still looking at the data by then.
Yeah. I know. My husband's a firefighter, so it's the pension system, and he's going to be there for 20 years. And I'm like, I don't know about the next 20 years what I'm going to be doing. I hope it's TTA, but you just don't know anymore.
You don't.
So anyway, okay, let's kind of switch to some of the differences you've seen in the average case size across different marketing funnels. In your study, you track everything from TV to radio to dinner seminars to referrals. What are some insights that advisors should be looking at, and how have they shifted in the past bit of time?
I always start with macro versus micro. If anyone's ever heard me talk, I have to say that as a preface, because I've done this with so many offices, that some offices constantly have a high average case size from TV, like always. Other ones don't. And so when I talk about this is more like my experience of talking to lots and lots of offices. There's a macro story with all the data when we include 100 offices, right? And then there's a micro story when I'm just coaching one-on-one. So your story may not align with this, and that's fine. That's your micro story. However, overall rule of thumb, yes, dinner seminars tend to be on the higher end still, and people don't want to admit that. A lot of times people are like, oh, the close rates are lower for seminars, which they are this year. That's a whole other podcast that we can talk about at some point. But that doesn't mean that they're losing. We have a higher average case size. Therefore, you all are making more per new client coming in. So it doesn't mean that they're losing. So that's kind of how dinner seminars are functioning. Referrals tend to be lower. And that should make sense to everybody, right? It's not always our avatar that's coming in, but we're getting referred to them. So therefore the ROI is extremely high on it, because we didn't spend a lot of money anyways. So referrals tend to be on the lower end. Radio is a crapshoot. Radio, I've seen offices all of a sudden they'll get someone who's like, I listened to you for years and I've got, $7 million and I decided it's time to come in. And they're like, holy cow, this is why radio is worth it. In the long term, this is why it's a slow burn. So radio is all over the map. That's my 2 cents. And TV is getting there. TV also tends to have a higher average case size. I think it's just attracting, think about the psychology of it, right? If there's an advisor who's on TV, it's very clear that they have the finances and they are doing well as a company. So therefore someone with a higher net worth feels a little bit more comfortable talking to them because they know they're successful.
Right.
So just that point, but I also see that in the data. That's not just, me just saying, I think that's how it happens. I do see that. I do see that in the data. So that's kind of how they differ. Digital, I didn't study too deep into digital, but you can look at the study and read it in there. But that's not much to say on digital right now.
Yeah. I always say for TV, you really need 2 things, and that's a person of patience. You have to have both, because it is very expensive and it is kind of a long burn, long funnel. But again, we can dive into that on another one. I want to touch base on dinner seminars. So I think this is hugely popular within the industry that we serve, but also a lot of advisors, newer advisors. I've talked to quite a few, and they're like, man, dinner seminars just seem kind of like the outdated practice. Again, a little bit more like my dad's marketing funnel. I'm going to stick with radio and TV and podcast and all the fun stuff. And I think it's just been so consistent and like you said, even though there are lower, close rates, because we have a higher average case size, it still is very profitable. And I always just make the case for dinner seminars in general. And I think it's interesting that they have the highest case size. Do you feel like they will continue to have that even as other digital strategies start to evolve a bit more? Because I feel like digital hasn't been on the scene for a ton of time, especially for those that are retiring. It's not always the most attractive because it is a bit of a newer, funnel. But do you see anything really coming into play with dinner seminars over the next, let's say, 3 years?
Good question. And I don't know.
Fair.
What I will say about dinner seminars is they have been tried and true for years. And when anything shifts with, I've done this so long and I constantly hear people, they don't work anymore. And I'm like, I have heard that since 2010. So, and they still have a highest average case size. They still have a positive ROI. More often than not, what I see happen is that people's sales process changes, or they're hiring new advisors, or they get lazy and they change something in the sales process, and not a lot of people do a good job of tracking. And the easiest way to blame something is to blame the funnel itself and be like, they don't work anymore. People, I do this for a living. I look at people's data all day long, and there are so many people still thriving with seminars. They're the ones who haven't changed their process, or they follow and track their process and they know what's going wrong in the process. It's not a dinner seminar problem. It is a process problem or a people problem.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the average case size is going to do. It has started to creep up. It has remained high. So to me, maybe it'll stay there. I think what's going to happen from a tracking standpoint, from a demographic standpoint, with all of these different marketing funnels and AI, and like there's so much on the precipice of the digital type stuff. ROI specifically, I know we're not talking about ROI, but I think ROI is it's already not in our top 5, but I think it'll become even less important because everything is going to be a conglomerate and it's all going to be mixed together. And so to determine these ROIs per funnel is going to be less and less easy to do, as well as relevant. I already see it happening. I already see people come to a dinner seminar 3 years ago, and then they listen to your radio, and then they just see TV, and now they retire and they decide to come in. And for the way we track that, they're going to be given to TV and it's going to look like a higher average case size, but originally they came to your seminar. So that's how I see it potentially working later down the road. And I know that was a bit of a rabbit trail, but I just think dinner seminars still work. They've been tried and true. People want to blame them for a lot of things, and I don't think that's fair.
I think that's a good thing that you said also. You really have to track so that you know what's changing. Because we've even seen, the introduction of AI emails for follow-up to dinner seminars when we talk about processes and how that's actually hurt a lot of offices, that it's not as relational and it's not as compelling for the person to come in. And we've seen, certain rates drop, whether that's stick rates or, follow up to get them into the actual dinner seminar. So I find that there's a lot more than just blaming the funnel, like you mentioned, and it's really knowing your process and knowing your people and knowing if you change something, tracking that to ensure, hey, I made this change and it did X versus I'm going to revert that and then go back to Y because that's what worked better. So, huge plug for tracking in general. We're just big fans of
it. Is. And I just read a study that one of our affiliates came out with, and it was their 2025 study. And even in that, they were talking about how like people were saying the highest ROIs were, referrals and networking and dinner seminars. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what the majority of people are doing. But even in that study, they were saying a large majority of people were honest and said, I don't actually know because I'm not totally tracking. It's just that things are working and the lights are staying on. And I'm like, oh, that's like a knife. I hate
Well, it's like, I feel like I always equate it to exercise. You know what I mean? It's like you think you're eating super healthy and then all of a sudden you start tracking your macros and you're like, whoa, I eat way too much fat or way too much carbs or whatever it is. And it's very eye-opening. And it's the same with data. Data is always a black light that shows what's happening in the firm. It shows where to focus. It shows what you should be avoiding. It just shows the picture and highlights what needs to happen. So it's really important that people track. And whether you're using Track That Advisor or not, just track in some capacity. I know we've had, we have several podcasts out there. That's the top 5. Start with one. Start with one metric to track. But I digress because I could talk about the need for tracking all day. So let's kind of switch from, just data talking to actual strategy. When we talk about average case size, I know we have the reverse engineer marketing tool on trackthatadvisor.com, which is so stinking helpful for people that want to try to back into, hey, how many leads do I need for 2026 to measure how many I actually close, to the average case size, to actually meet my goals and what I want to succeed in. But when we talk about that reverse engineering marketing plan, how can advisors actually use their average case size to set realistic goals for next year?
Yep. To the point, I think you mentioned it earlier, though, the average case size tells us even a bunch about your sales cycle. So you can have less leads. We could also have a lower average case size. Different advisors can be seeing different demographics of people. I mean, all of these things can be used and found out by using average case size. So we have an office right now. Their average is $1.5 million. They do very little marketing because they're referral heavy, they're center of influence heavy. They are on TV and radio, but they're not getting a ton of leads from that. The leads they are getting are $2 to $5 million leads, and they can afford to have a very small amount of new leads coming in each week. So that's kind of how they're using it for planning, is like, okay, we don't really need that many. So long as we're getting X amount, we know we will close a certain amount. The close rate. So close rate lowers typically. And the reason why I want to try to keep it high level, but you kind of got to go in the weeds a little bit on this one, is because when we look at close rate, we're looking at specific timelines. So if I look at your data in a quarter and you have a $2 million average case size, you won't have closed very many of those leads in that quarter, right? If we look at it as a whole for the whole year, it's probably going to be a little bit lower. Our benchmark is at 30%, and the people who close the higher average case sizes typically are between 20 and 25.
Oh wow, that much of a difference.
Yeah, I mean it's a 5 to 10% difference.
Yeah.
And if you're talking one quarter, sometimes we can see it as low as 15. That doesn't actually mean anything's wrong. These people just take a long time. They're on vacation. They have the means. They can wait. They can wait the market out. They can do all these things that a $250,000 average case size can't do. So it totally jacks with your close rates. So from a planning standpoint, we can afford to have a lower close rate with the higher average case size. Then planning for your advisors. You might be planning for the new business, new production for 2026 for them. If you don't have their average case size, the planning is going to be the planning actually should be different based on the average case size for each of your advisors. If you've got somebody who can write the higher net worths, they're going to have a different close rate. They need a different number of leads versus the person who can sit through people all day long and meet with 30 new first appointments a week because their average case size is $200,000. And likewise, their close rate should be around a 30 to a 35, not a 20 to a 25. That average case size right there should guide you on close rates and then how you're coaching your advisors. So it's not fair to put both of them at the same level of expectation. Hopefully that makes sense. That was a rabbit trail.
No, it does. No, I think it kind of leads into a question that I have. So let's say you know your average case size for last year for certain advisors. How do you determine really who can fit with high net worth clients versus who potentially maybe need a little bit of the smaller net worth clients? How does that work? And what are some advice that you can give to advisory practices? Because I can imagine that there's a little bit of psychology involved, right? You have 2 to 5 advisors and you don't want to always pinpoint, hey, you're always going to get the lower net worth clients and you're always going to get the higher net worth clients. That's probably going to cause some difficulty there in that relationship management. But how should offices decide which model fits their business and their advisor?
I think you have to try it. There are some offices that we work with where it's one gets the high net worth and one does not. They're more green. They're new. They're in sales. Sure. Versus the psychological versus the relationship. The higher net worth individuals want relationship. The lower net worth, they know it's a transaction. They don't really care. And they're not giving you their entire portfolio. That's another strategy for some offices. I see it all the time. Some offices are like, hey, we're going to take the quick win at the lower average case size right now and get our foot in the door and close them for crumbs. But I know later, once we develop the relationship and we develop the trust, I'm going to get the full 5 million later. I watch that as a strategy.
Yeah.
So that's another way to look at it too. But if you're training advisors, if they're new, if they're green and they are a transactional, or they're just one of those hungry advisors who's pretty cutthroat and to the point, they typically don't do well with average case with the higher net worth people. They just don't. They're not interested in going deep or building trust or checking in and genuinely caring. The people who I've watched do this well and grow it well over the last 5 years are the ones that like I will touch base with them every quarter. Every quarter, it's in my calendar, and I'm going to reach out to so-and-so, personally email them. I know when their birthday is. I'm just going to send them a little something. And again, that goes back to the long-term nurture of these leads. But you have to have an advisor that'll work with.
Right. And I think it's not a one size fits all model. I feel like some practices we've seen, like you said, they take all 250K, liquid assets as their baseline of what's a qualified lead, and they do really well because it's quantity. It's continual, just getting them in, getting them out, and it does work well. So I would encourage advisors listening that it's not one size fits all. Like maybe you do want to get to that higher net worth so you can have, less leads, less closing, but it takes time. And it also is important to really dive into your metrics and know your numbers. So you do analyze, hey, this advisor is maybe better here, this advisor is better here, which is more relational. I think also as an advisor, your people. I think just you as a founder, Erica, I think our team and the people that are going to work well with certain people and not work well with others. So it's the same for advisory practices. Know your people. That's a really important thing. So yeah. I think it's interesting. So can you share maybe a real world example of how average case size has revealed something unexpected about a market funnel performance and how it's performed? Because I feel like a lot of times, you can see the numbers, you can see the data. Has there been a review or something where you've gone in and you're just like, whoa, this is very different for your region versus elsewhere?
Good question. We have one advisor right now that what's interesting, we've worked with them for a long time. And they used to be transactional, and they were insurance only as it started. And that was kind of what they were known for. And people would come in and they would see a lot of leads, to your point, like it was quantity, right? So they were constantly aiming for this. And just a couple of years ago, I went in to do a review, and I'm like, holy cow. First of all, leads are shrinking, which is not great. And they were struggling. And because of that, and because we saw like the leads start diminishing, they totally changed their mind on like, okay, we are seeing this and it's not okay. We're not thrilled with it. Therefore, because we're getting less leads, let's make sure they're the right leads. And so they totally flipped the script, and they decided to go after like higher net worth individuals, which was never their MO. Like this was a strategic decision that they made. And they've done it. I mean, I have watched, they used to have an average case size of 350. And this was many years ago. And now this year, we just did their 3Q and they're sitting at a 1.2. I mean, that is what, four times the amount that is coming in than I've ever seen, even in the area that they're in. So that was interesting to me because I'm like, oh, I thought they had found their bread and butter, but like turns out there was a lot of money there and people who wanted someone who was niche and wanted kind of more of like the luxe brand. And so they've actually completely rebranded their office for this.
Oh, wow.
For high net worth, and just completely changed the narrative, which is really cool to watch.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too. And I think there's a key piece of advice there. Like, don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to change your approach and change your, again, approach or strategy. And it really comes from knowing and understanding your numbers, knowing where you can pivot, what's working, what's not, and then taking that action is a big piece. Because I see this a lot, and it's not only in advisory practices. I think it's in life in general. We see the problem, but we're not willing to make a change because we're hesitant about what comes from that. And I think it's important that you do make the change, make the action step. And even if it was the wrong step, you the change in action sometimes just breeds irrelevance and it will move on too quickly and you won't have time to actually go back. So make the change when you need to. And then if it's still not working, then make another change. I think
or like, I feel like they could have, right? Like they could have been like, okay, we just got to work on the leads. We got to work on the leads. And maybe you can, like, this is not a one size fits all, like you said, but I just thought it was really refreshing that they were like, okay, well, we're not getting as many leads. So because of that, let's like fully pivot. And I thought that was really cool instead of just like grinding at the same thing of trying to put, what is it, like lipstick on a pig? Not that their marketing funnels are a pig, but it's like they completely like changed animals. I mean, it was just a whole different crop. That was a terrible analogy, but that's the best I could come up with. So.
That was like a Molly moment this morning.
You grew up on a dairy farm. I know. I feel like you should be proud of my farm.
I'm very proud. I know, even when you were talking about just the different how offices now are a lot bigger. It's like I saw that growing up on the dairy farm. It used to be a lot of smaller family offices or family dairies where it was just, everyone had 500 or so cows. And it was like, by the time my dad, eventually got out of it, it was like, if you did not have 4,000 cows, you didn't survive. That was a thing. So, we grew up on this 4,000 cow farm, which was super fun, but I've seen that with advisory practices also, just being acquired and growing and growing and growing and growing. And it's no longer really just this simple, one person office. It's really, hey, let's continue to grow. And again, it's not one size fits all. It's what you can do to make a difference and make an impact and how you can thrive in this industry. So kind of one last wrap-up question I want to talk about also, maybe two questions. When people are looking at average case size, how often should they be looking at this? I know like at Track That Advisor, we recommend quarterly reviews, if not mid-year and annual reviews to twice a year, but how often should advisory practices be checking this out and why does that matter?
Yeah, that is a long-term data point. I wouldn't even look at that quarterly. I'd start looking at it at mid-year and then look at it again at the end of the year. I mean, you can keep an eye on it, but I wouldn't make decisions based on it for a minute because one, it can fluctuate. Two, you need several under but we need to close people, right? So it's not a stick rate or a conversion rate. Those all come in the beginning. We need to close a lot of people and we got to get that under our belt. And we don't technically really close enough people to even start looking at ROI till mid-year. And average case size is probably similar to that. It plays a very, very important role, but it is not a leading indicator. It's a lagging indicator. So let it.
That makes sense. No, that makes sense. Should they include the outliers? Like you mentioned, you'll get a $7 million client, which is very far outside of your typical clientele. Should the outliers be included or no when they're looking at average case size?
We do both. So yeah, you get the one case, or someone sold their business for $19 million and we throw that in there and I'm like, holy cow, you guys have a $7 million average case size. So I would recommend pull that out when we look at average case size. That's a great question. And most people ask us to do that when we do the analysis. But yeah, food for thought for the advisor, if someone closed a big whale of a case that's totally uncommon, pull it out.
I would do that. I mean, if I were an advisor, I'd want to know like what my typical is versus, great, we had a great year and we get a little extra at the end of the year, but like what's my typical? So
the one thing I will note too, sorry, little bit of a side tangent, going back to by advisor, when we look at it, if you can look at it by advisor, by source, sometimes your advisors I just did a call with somebody who's like, so-and-so's doing so well because he got an in with one of his clients who is from a certain company. And so all of a sudden this advisor is doing all these like referral events and these networking events and the average case size is soaring. His close rate's actually even soaring because he got an in, right? With this whole other company of someone who retired from there. So that'd be good to look at too. If you can look at it by advisor, by funnel, like by marketing source would be. And again, I know we struggle with tracking in this industry, but if you can get that down in the weeds, that'd be the best benefit to you.
Yeah. I feel like too, I always say that it's a bit of a matchmaking process. Someone that does really well on radio maybe isn't going to do so great on TV or is really going to thrive in the dinner seminars or educational workshops. There's a bit of a personality shift there that some advisors really do well with certain events. And so there's certain styles and funnels. So if you can really track into the weeds, it's hugely helpful. So I think it's important. I think too, like before we close, I think just encouraging advisors, go back over this past year and figure out your average case size. You're in October now, you're planning for 2026. You can use the reverse engineering tool for more planning. It's on, again, on our website. And we'll link it in the show notes as well. But I think just if you can get your average case size for this year for 2025, I think for all advisors, that's going to be a hugely impactful thing, especially as we go into 2026. So go get it. If you need help finding it, you're welcome to email support@trackthatadvisor.com. Also, they can help you with the formula stuff if you need help with that. So last question, Erica, we close every time with where are you trekking? And I know you have a really fun thing, and I know you're not going to love it, but I'm going to make you highlight the cool thing that you're doing pretty soon. And just, yeah, I think it's really cool. And it's something that we can all encourage and root you on. So tell us where you're trekking this quarter.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I'm attempting.
No, you're doing.
I'm doing.
The mindset shift.
I know. A 50-mile run on November 15th. So it is, I'm not sure when this will all air, but it's a few weeks away from right now. So I've been training for that for several months, and I've never done this far. I've done a 50K, which is like 32 miles. So this is a lot more miles than that. And I think about this every time because I have a coach. It's like helping me map this out, and he's tracking my progress, and he's making weekly adjustments to like my training. And I'm always like, man, this is why people need like outsiders to help them, because he'll be like, okay, well, this is happening, and like, you should probably change this, and here's what you need to keep in mind. And I'm like, this is so parallel to like what we do for our advisors. Like, even me as a runner, I have a running coach because it's so helpful. He sees things that I don't. But yes, that's where I'm tracking in a few weeks.
We're rooting for you. So I think this will probably air after that. Okay. So everyone can email you and ask you if you finish.
Yes.
I will make that pressure on there. So
yeah, thank you.
No, thank you for really telling us about average cases. I think it's hugely impactful. And like we mentioned in the beginning, this will be in our resource center. You're welcome to sign up for that if you're not a Track That Advisor client. It's hugely impactful. Erica releases a study a month, very similar on average case size, on TV funnels, very similar to this study, just very in the weed stuff that every advisor should know. So well, again, we'll link it in the show notes, but if you have questions about it, email support@trackthatadvisor.com. They can help you also as well. So thanks, Erica. Appreciate your knowledge.
Thank you. Bye.